Uruguay, good morning. How are you? Great to be here. What an intro, right? I'm pumped up. My first time, really energized, quite excited. So I'm going to talk a little faster than usual out of excitement, but also we've got a lot to cover. Really energized by the conversations I've been having over the last 24 hours on the innovation that's happening here in Uruguay. So by show of hands, how many of you have used artificial intelligence, for example, over, let's say, the last 30 days? Oh, okay. So about 1 billion years ago, the first human came on this earth. About 1 billion hours ago, religion emerged. About 1 billion seconds ago, the first PDF was sent around the world. And so much like that, we are all using artificial intelligence. PDFs is now the world's most powered AI software out there. So greetings from the future of creativity. Going to be a great discussion on all the artificial intelligence as our platform of our current era. And so over the last number of years, we've had great innovations from things like AlphaGo. We've had books. We've had Sophia, the first humanoid. We've had autonomous cars. We've had the voice assistants. And we've had a number of books. We've also had some interesting software that can predict the success of movies and creativity. But we must not forget how powerful that phone in our pocket is. It has some great, tremendous powers and features all by artificial intelligence. Everything from the voice assistants to the text generators to now we're entering this new era on the AI spectrum of we're going from automation to AI generation. So on your phone, very soon, if not now, you can have AI-generated images, AI-generated video, and even AI-generated 3D simulations. So let's not underestimate the current power we have currently, but still balance that with the excitement of the future. Speaking of the future, it's not only about EV cars, but a lot of innovation is happening in the automotive space. We've got level 1 through level 5 capabilities with artificial intelligence. We're probably around level 1 or 2 currently with the hands-off predictive elements of artificial intelligence. Just imagine this scenario. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. So many things coming at you so quickly at an intersection, and within microseconds, the AI system has to interpret and predict what to do. Not only that, but you have to have the infrastructure and the latency in there to allow for those microsecond decisions to happen. So quite exciting where we currently are and where we're about to go in terms of AI level 1 through 5 capabilities in the automotive space. We even have AI in our homes currently. One of my favorites is the Roomba, where it can map out your room and dictate and know where to go to clean the room. We recently got a puppy, and this is her favorite AI tool as well. So those are some aspects currently with artificial intelligence. So much so, a new report just came out that by equal to the show of hands, about 30% or so feel that they're using AI capabilities currently, but in actuality, it's about 80%, if not more, that are using AI capabilities. But with that said, as much as things seem to change, they stay the same. At the end of the day, innovation, AI, technology is still about us, the human, us, the consumer. And so with that in mind, we'll talk shortly about 5 or so trends. And as we go through the trends, it's great to see really innovative solutions, but at the end of the day, it's still about us. And so us meaning we need technology that knows and respects us. We have to be delighted at every turn. We need meaningful moments at every point throughout the experience. So let's get into it. Intelligent technology for innovative solutions. So it's all about, at the end of the day, about experiences. How can we leverage human creativity plus technology to create end-to-end, multi-touchpoint, omni-channel experiences? Not only for consumers, not only for businesses, but also for employees as well. And that's where technology, with its predictive personalization capabilities, will really allow for experiences to scale like never before. Another pretty interesting stat, 86% of buyers will pay more for a better customer experience, but when you see the kind of contrast, only 1% currently feel that they're getting a great customer experience. And that, again, is a huge opportunity for Uruguay and for technologists and creativity to really tap into the capabilities of artificial intelligence to have these more innovative experiences. I like to frame it, and I was chatting with a number of folks over the last 24 hours and really encouraged by the depth and savviness and expertise of AI here in Uruguay. But I like to always bring it back as a reminder, even for myself. I like to take the term AI, artificial intelligence, and flip it and think about it as an intelligent assistant. And this brings me back to my childhood in many ways. Growing up in Wisconsin, I had, of all things, a pet pigeon. But make no mistake about it, this was no ordinary pigeon. This was a champion racing pigeon. Her name was Roxanne. She could see 26 miles out in front of her. She could fly 700 miles, and she would come home through rain, through storms, through hawk attacks, and win races. She was this champion racing pigeon. So you might be thinking, that's nice, Chris. That's cute, but why are we talking about your pet pigeon here in Uruguay? And the reason is we have to go back hundreds, if not thousands of years to the Olympics in Greece to understand the importance, the metaphorical importance of Roxanne. The first Olympics, the runners, the messengers of the day were actually taking the winners or the losers' information back to their hometowns, and they were dying of heat exhaustion. So the community thought leadership at the time said, how can we tap into a greater intelligent assistant to help us with the messages? And they tapped into the pigeon to send messages back to their hometown. So much like that, as we go through the rest of the presentation and as you go back to your offices or your homes and think about problem solving with technology, I ask you to always remember Roxanne as that intelligent assistant. How can we create technology and experiences that at the end of the day are all about intelligent assistance? So let's get into it. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning is transforming not only how we create, but what we create. Here's a little video on what we're doing over at Adobe in terms of software development with artificial intelligence, but also from an API standpoint. That video in many ways helps me get up every morning. I get quite excited to see all the possibilities that we currently have and we're going to continue to have in the future because of artificial intelligence and technology. Adobe Sensei is our platform that we embed AI-enhanced features throughout a number of our products, but we also have APIs that can be customized by folks like yourselves. So that's a little bit of a setup on the opportunity with AI and how we can frame it in our minds from a mindset standpoint. But now let's get into the meat of the presentation, 5 trends on how to create innovative experiences. So the first one is all about asset composability. It's a new emerging trend where essentially over the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a lot of talk in the tech world, software world, about creating design systems. And at the heart of that was this notion, methodology about atomic design, right? You create one asset that you can build out from there. From a software standpoint. We're now seeing how asset composability takes shape and form in the market. So consumers, customers have this ability to customize assets because of AI on its own. A great example of that is a recent one from Cadbury called Shah Rukh Khan My Ad, where they created this asset during the midst of the pandemic and they let it loose out into the wild. And so they gave small businesses the opportunity to be able to customize experiences with one of the largest actors in the world. And it's all powered by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and facial recognition. Let's take a little look at that video.
Big brands have big money to hire famous people, but not the small guys. And they are the ones who are still hurting. Presenting Shah Rukh Khan, My Ad.
Welcome, Shah Rukh Khan! He almost certainly has more devoted fans than any other movie star in the world.
Biggest movie star in the world.
Forbes have called him one of the biggest movie stars in the world.
We help small businesses by making Shah Rukh Khan the world's biggest movie star, their brand ambassador.
इस दिवाली आप भी ना अपने पास वाले फैशन और एम्पोरियम से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग करना। सिद्धि विनायक इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स से लेटेस्ट स्मार्टफोन खरीदकर धमाकेदार सेल्फी पोस्ट।
क्या कर रहे हो? मीठा लाए कि नहीं?
We used machine learning to recreate Shah Rukh Khan's face and voice to take the local store names in the ads.
आप भी ना पास वाली चॉइस ऑफ फैशन से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग करना, रॉयल फैशन से ही, क्लॉथ्स से ही, पास वाली लक्ष्मी कलेक्शन से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग।
Different versions of the same ad with local store names were targeted as per the PIN code of the viewer, showing them only the nearby stores. But it is impossible to cover all the stores. So we gave the power to the people to create their own version of Shah Rukh Khan, My Ad. Any small business owner could promote their stores through their own social media networks like WhatsApp forwards and other social media pages.
It is Shah Rukh Khan selling your store, man. If you're a small time.
Amazing, amazing from so many different levels, right? How the AI can recognize the face to the text prompts so it can be customized. Really exciting opportunity. So that's the first trend, asset composability. As you're innovating, think about how you can create something that can scale but also be personalized by the end user. That was number one. Number two is imaginative sustainability. I think I had some conversations last night about the importance of brand purpose. One of the major pillars of brand purpose, obviously, is to continue a better world from an environmental standpoint. And so we define imaginative sustainability as a main driver of ways to coexist with the world, both environmentally, economically, and socially. And this here, again, is where artificial intelligence can scale human problem solving like never before. A great example of that is by Dole. Dole realized they had millions and millions of waste because of pineapples' skins, and they used artificial intelligence to see how, within the manufacturing process, they can create a reusable, renewable leather alternative. And this is called the Dole Pinatext example. And so I think one big underscore here is innovation can create new business models, as we're about to see in this next case study.
Every year, over 2.5 million tons of pineapples are grown in the Philippines. While the fruit is packaged to feed people all over the world, pineapple leaves are left behind. For every ton of pineapples harvested, 3 tons of leaves are wasted, and when left to rot could create methane emissions over 20 times more harmful than CO2. To make a change, Dole, one of the largest producers of pineapples in the world, partnered with Ananas Anam to produce Piñatex, a vegan, cruelty-free, and sustainable leather alternative made from the fiber of pineapple leaves that would otherwise go to waste. While other vegan alternatives are plastic-based and ecologically toxic, Piñatex is a sustainably sourced textile with a closed-loop production. After the rescued pineapple leaves become Piñatex, the residual leaf biomass is converted into natural fertilizer, providing a truly eco-friendly option for the fashion industry.
In some ways, these videos are tough to watch because I feel, why didn't I think of that idea? It's really a great example of how AI, in this case, pinpointed manufacturing inefficiencies or waste in this matter and allowed it to scale to create new business models and partnerships. So that was example number 2. Number 3, one of my favorites is we're calling it persistent utility, and that's this notion, this mindset of how can software, technology, AI continuously offer service throughout the entire experience. And so a customer-first mindset methodology that constantly provides service and value at every single stage, whether it be the software developer, the creator, the content distributor, or the end consumer. Here's a great example from Sherwin-Williams, the paint store. And they literally had the brief up on their wall for 5 years on how can they transform the physical paint chip. And so they thought about it for years and years, and they came up with this idea called Speaking in Color, powered by artificial intelligence as an assistant to create innovation. Let's take a look.
Our world is filled with color. In fact, the human eye can detect over 1 million of them. Yet color is more than what we see. Informed by our unique experiences, color means something different to each of us. So how do you find that one color? The one that you, and only you, can see. Introducing Speaking in Color from Sherwin-Williams, a global leader in color coatings that is redefining how human and intuitive the color experience can be. The first ever AI color system is designed to help architects and like-minded visionaries find colors based on personal inspiration. All they have to do is say the words.
Let's try crystal clear Caribbean Ocean. Yeah, that's it.
Speaking in Color is voice activated and instantly analyzes millions of images via a search algorithm and optical recognition technology to create a personalized color palette. Through conversation and the intuitive power of AI, users easily discover,
maybe that's too blue. Let's lighten it up just a little bit.
Refine,
I like that. Let's add a little bit more green.
And find their 1 in a million color.
I love it. That's perfect.
But that's just the beginning.
Let's see the colors from the art district in Miami.
Snow Canyon, Utah.
Sparkling champagne at sunset. Let's get some more mossy greens in there, something really rich.
I like what I'm seeing, but I want more gray than blue.
Okay, let's make it pop.
That is it.
The more people speak, the more we hear. As a result, Speaking in Color is providing insights into cultural and geographical influence.
So that last point I think is quite important to highlight in the sense of, from a persistent utility lens, those insights that are being gathered throughout the experience can then inform the next experience. So as you're building your products, your solutions, your experiences, think about how that in-marketplace performance data can then create this flywheel of innovation for the future. Really exciting things happening on the persistent utility front. One of my favorites, near and dear to my heart, is human creativity amplified by technology. And so that leads us to the fourth trend we're calling creative agility. Over the last couple of years, I think the one thing that is certain is volatility, right? For better or worse, things are going to be up and down, changing at a faster pace than ever before. By the way, this is only my second live event in over 2 years, so I really, respect and appreciate these moments for human interactivity. As much as I love technology, I think it's still about the human connection. So, creative agility. This next premise theme is all about organizational mindset, both technically and creatively, to ideate, execute, and deploy experiences dynamically is a key thought here, based on changing marketplace pivots. We fundamentally believe the winners or the losers are going to be the ones who have the ability organizationally to pivot on a dime going forward. And that's where technology combined with this mindset of agility will offer competitive advantage. One example is Heineken. They noticed that throughout the pandemic, a lot of the bars had to open, then close, and throughout that process, a lot of the beer, in this case, was starting to expire. And so they had the organizational agility to see how could they take that moment and turn it into kind of a lemonade, as an example. And so they used artificial intelligence to see how they could redeploy that beer that was about to expire, and they reutilized it for electricity, they reutilized it for animal feed, for heat, for fertilizer, and across the board. So I think really exciting things that happen when, as an organization, you have this mindset of agility. We're quite excited about it. Photoshop is now kind of one of our flagship products. You may have heard of Photoshop. Is now the world's most powered AI tool, and we're quite excited about how it's becoming even easier to use because of artificial intelligence, specifically neural filters. Here's a little bit of a video on how we're implementing artificial intelligence into our own tools.
Like a rainbow, coming colors in the air, everywhere. She comes in color. Colors everywhere. She combs her hair. She's like a rainbow.
In many ways, this is reflective of some of the conversations I've had over the last 24 hours or so. I've been inspired by you and what you're doing here in Uruguay in terms of your capability from a technical standpoint, but also your IP. You're building things. You're not just executing things. So much like that, I think human inspiration with that scalability of AI is a huge opportunity for the community down here. So moving on to our last but not least theme, opportunity is new realities, right? We've all heard in the news, dare I say, the metaverse. And so in many ways, the metaverse multiplied by artificial intelligence is going to lead to this new era in terms of creativity and experiences. So we define new realities as the rise of the metaverse plus Web3 and 3D immersive worlds will usher in new realities through VR, AR, MR, RRR, powered by experiences. So really exciting things happening on the metaverse front. I liken it to the mid-90s when the internet was just about to explode. We're at that moment in time with the metaverse as well. A great example of that over the last 12 months or so can be seen by Vice World News. And so they took kind of a very standard traditional experience of going into the museum and they amplified it by artificial intelligence and VR and AR technology. So when you are walking through the museum, you would hold up your phone and you would get alternative perspectives, narratives on history. And I thought that was a really interesting use case of AI to use visual recognition to give you an unbiased interpretation of history. So that's a really interesting example of from Vice Worldwide called Unfiltered History Tour. Encourage you to check it out online on YouTube. One underlying piece of that AR experience is 3D. We're quite excited about the democratization of 3D as well. You know, much how Photoshop allowed us all to be creators, we're now entering into this next era where we can all create within 3D. Here's a little video showing on those capabilities from a 3D standpoint.
Carry the load too. Whack your tail and raise your hand. Get out of control when they play the jam. No time to be proper and act polite. We're gonna rip this joint in half tonight. Whatever race, any color or creed, just step right up. We got something you need. What? A melody and a whole lot of rhythm. They're back in the spot and we got to get them. It's job one when we're up in the zone. We take them on a trip, then we're bringing them home. So come along as we carry the load to every road and country code. Say hey, 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 hey.
Thank you. We're quite excited about this sub-trend we're calling virtual photography. So over the last couple of years, obviously studios were shut down and to get out on location was becoming an increasingly challenge. And so what we saw was 3D within the e-com space just literally exploded. So now you can create models of all of your products and then deploy it through an e-com experience. So that's the last trend in terms of these new emerging realities. And so to end the presentation, and I'm looking down at the clock, aiming to leave some time for discussion, some questions. Love to hear your thoughts, but always like to end things on, I think I've even evolved my thinking from considerations to imperatives. So with great power comes great responsibility, or as this quote says, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. So as exciting as these 5 trends or so are, I think equally as important as we're building software, technology, experiences, we have to have an ethical mindset throughout our creation process. And I'm quite proud to be at Adobe because literally every step of the way we have the lens of ethics and how can we help guide the ethical use of our software. And so one example is we're partnering with UC Berkeley on this initiative called Content Authenticity. And so one subpoint of that is we now have technology that can go in and identify where things were manipulated, either within an image or a video. And I think that's going to be probably a sixth trend that we're going to see emerging going forward, is this need for authenticity in terms of content going forward. So quite proud of how we're approaching things in that regards. Here's some, design principles. Feel free to take a picture of it. I won't walk through all the bullet points, but this is how we think of things as we're going through the process from a design ethics standpoint. So last two slides or so, it's always fun to end on expectations, predictions for 2030. I got the crystal ball out for this one, and the reality is the only sustainable response to technical disruption is much like you to try to lead it. So I leave that with you and all of these great minds today, is we are the change we want in the future. And we can amplify that through artificial intelligence. So thanks, everyone, for going on this journey with me. I'm on all the social networks. I recently wrote a book talking about the opportunities with artificial intelligence. I think it's translated in Spanish as well. And essentially, it was a horrifying moment for me to stare at a blank page. And so I said, let's walk the walk. And I created an AI assistant to help me write the book. So it's the world's first book about AI using AI. So I encourage you to check that if you're interested as well. So we've got 10 minutes or so. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Do we have a mic? Yes, thank you. And I'm one caveat, happy to talk about anything. One thing I unfortunately can't talk too much about is some recent news about mergers and acquisitions. So I'm just setting.
Okay, first of all, thanks a lot for the talk. I think it was really interesting. And a question that comes to me often every time I go to a talk about AI and the technology nowadays is about security and transparency. Because, yeah, of course, I mean, you mentioned a lot about transparency and how that is important. It always has been important. But I mean, it's a good thing to hear from you, but it's like, how do you think is the best way to actually show it to the customers and whoever uses it? Because, I mean, again, I don't want to be with a tinfoil hat or anything like it, but it's just like a matter of like, okay, how can I see that that's a real transparency? How can I see that this is not being used to something like quite shady or something like, okay, nowadays with all the, like the AI with the fake videos that you can have someone else's face and it looks super real, and that's getting better and better. Like, how is it possible for me or to anyone to know, like, okay, how is this tool working for me to know that it's actually not being super badly used, let's say? I mean, of course, no one knows all the background, but I mean, still, that's...
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's quite important, very important pillar to consistently think about. Two thoughts. One is back to the content authenticity initiative, and that's a consortium of many different companies, along with Twitter and the big tech companies, and we're all coming together to create a framework of trust. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to trust, and you can have different, layers within your tech stack to encourage trust, from security to privacy. I think a very important layer that we collectively have to solve is to authenticate the user. In the social world, who is that person? And so I think we're going to see that going forward a lot more, is this need to authenticate who the user is going forward. I think that could alleviate 90% of a lot of the challenges we're seeing out there. So I'd encourage, it's a very customized approach. Happy to chat with you after, but it's a multi-layered approach to build security, privacy, but ultimately I think it ladders up at the end of the day to trust. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns, use cases? Yeah. Yeah, great question from Juan up front. The question is, any thoughts around the metaverse? And I think, in many ways, we've seen similar patterns that happen throughout the cultural narrative arc with artificial intelligence over the last 10 years. And we're seeing a similar pattern happening with this cultural conversation around the metaverse. I think, the first is, what is it? Kind of skepticism, and now we're leaning into it a bit more. One aspect that I'm highly encouraged by is it's not just the metaverse, but it's the metaverse times Web 3. And Web 3 is different, by the way, than Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is all about semantic, distribution. Web 3 is all about blockchain capability, and it's still, debatable. Is blockchain going to be the predominant technology, or is it going to be snarks and sharks going forward? But the underlying premise is we've gone from read-only to read-write to now read-write-own. And so now when you combine this ownership capability throughout metaverse experiences, I think that's going to unlock huge potential going forward in terms of asset portability because of ownership and IP ownership, but also shared revenue models. We're seeing a lot in the early days over the last 24 months with NFTs, which kind of had a similar cycle, right? It went up and now it's kind of on the downturn, but underlying principles of NFT, I think, are going to be pretty sustainable. One interesting factoid, by the way, of NFTs, if you didn't know, 99% of the artwork of NFTs is not on the blockchain. It's all on the cloud. So if you're buying an NFT, I encourage you to look into where that asset is, which cloud provider that is on. And so I think that's also an example of how blockchain is still, I think, in theory, a great thing, but the use case is still not there from a practical level. So quite exciting, use cases from the metaverse going forward. Thank you, everyone.